Hi, and welcome to this Weekday Word. One of the passages appointed in the daily office today comes from the 5th chapter of Paul's letter to the Christians in Rome. And in that chapter, Paul talks some about the role that suffering plays in the life of discipleship to Jesus. A lot of people assume that if you do everything right and you follow Jesus faithfully, you're not going to suffer. And so when they begin to suffer, they start questioning what they've done wrong. And sometimes it is the result of sin, but many times what it is something that God allows in us in order to help us grow. Paul is really drawing upon what would be called virtue ethics, or the formation of character, well known in the ancient world. And so what he writes to the Romans is this: we rejoice in our sufferings, because suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Suffering produces endurance that produces character that produces hope. What most of us long for in the midst of our suffering is hope. We want to know that it's going to end. We hope that this is not going to be the way that it always is. But what most of us also want to do is short circuit the process of getting there. Because the kind of hope that God wants us to have, the kind of hope that Paul is pointing to, is not wishful thinking, but is really just a part of who we are, something that comes from our very core. And so when we suffer, Paul says it produces endurance. Going through difficult things makes us stronger. Going through different things produces endurance, the ability to withstand for a long time. And that in turn, Paul says, produces character. It becomes a part of who we are. Character, it is said, is what we do when no one is looking. Character is what exists on the inside. And so endurance becomes simply a part of who we are. When hard things come, we don't run away, but we just get ready to make it through the storm. So suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. When that kind of endurance becomes a part of who we are, hope springs from it because we know that it will not stay this way forever. We have hope. We have a real and certain expectation that this is not the way that it will always be. Whether that means it will change in this life or in the next doesn't really matter, because endurance is a part of our character, and we're ready, like Paul, to run the race with endurance until we cross the finish line. And so if you are going through something difficult today, I pray that you are encouraged by these words, that God allows suffering to come along, not because we've done something wrong necessarily, but because it's always an opportunity to grow, as it produces endurance that becomes a part of our character and produces real, deep hope. Be blessed this day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.